2, 3, 5. Now I'm seeing there are quite a few people here still. I remind you, my name is Gleb. I'm hosting today. Some familiar faces in the room. This is one of my favorite panels that is coming up. We will have 4 speakers, 4 people. One of my favorite journalists, Neil Murray. We will have Peter Vesterbacka. Will Jeanette Carlsson, if I'm not mistaken, and Egita Poļanska. Now, these 4 people know a lot what it takes about building an ecosystem. An ecosystem, anything from government-related initiatives to the grassroots movement in Finland and in Latvia. They're actually going to talk about what does it take to make sure there's major unicorns coming out, major companies coming out, but it's also going to be a bit of a debate, a bit of a conversation, and I'm really, really looking forward to hearing this. Now, Neil is going to try to make this a conversation, so I ask of you to pay attention. I ask you to think about the questions you want to ask, and he's going to facilitate it. Now, on this note, I would kindly ask to welcome our lovely panelists on stage, and a warm hand of applause for them, please. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Gleb. Hello, everyone. So, actually, me and Peter just came off the other stage, and we started to touch on some of these points, but we've reserved the juicy stuff for you. But essentially, we're going to talk about how you go about building a tech ecosystem and what the important parts of that are. But before we do that, yeah, like Gleb said, I'm a journalist, I'm invested, I'm having an identity crisis, essentially. But I have something called the Nordic Web and invest in pre-seed Nordic startups and also covering them through kind of analysis and insights into the venture capital scene there. So without further ado, I'll let my panel quickly introduce themselves. Jeanette?
Hi, everybody. I'm Jeanette Carlsson, and I'm the founder of Tech Nordic Advocates. And can you hear me? Is that okay? Oh, that's better. Should I repeat that? I'm Jeanette Carlsson. I'm the founder of Tech Nordic Advocates. So we're Northern Europe's biggest tech leader network. We have 700 members across the Nordics and Baltics. And our members, our tech leaders, includes anybody from being a 20-year-old startup founder to an investor, an accelerator, policymaker, or a boss of a corporate. The idea is we join the dots across the ecosystem, facilitate collaboration through lots of specific things, and make people work together so we can help everybody grow and also promote the whole of the Nordic and Baltic tech and startup sector to the rest of the world through our global tech advocates network. So that's us.
Hi, I'm Egita, and I have actually 2 hats. I guess my main hat currently is Startup Wise Guys Accelerator, the leading B2B startup accelerator in Europe for B2B companies. And I'm working there with program and partnerships. And that kind of also has led me to the other hat, which is I'm the chairwoman of the board of the Latvian Startup Association, which is a non-profit organization that unites all the startups and startup ecosystem with one voice in Latvia.
Yeah, and I'm Peter, been involved with kind of like the startup scene and that for 20 or so years. So been involved with kind of like setting up Slush and a lot of the kind of like initiatives back in Finland. So that's kind of like where I'm based, and then currently working with several startups and also connecting Helsinki and Tallinn physically through a tunnel. So that's kind of like another project that I'm involved with.
Cool. We're also meant to be joined by Joanna from Startup Sesame, but unfortunately she's still on a plane, so I think she's going to miss this one. But she will be here later for anyone who is looking to catch her. So yeah, I think there's thousands of articles about how do you build a startup ecosystem, how do you be the next Silicon Valley, yuck. But do you know what? I think a lot of it comes down to something that we wouldn't really want to talk about so much, which I believe that a lot of it is revolved around a self-fulfilling prophecy and hype. And it's not just about believing whether you can build an ecosystem, but it's getting others to believe that you can build it and engaging those others in it. So while we talk about the building blocks and stuff like that, I would just like to open with kind of saying, do you think that this self-fulfilling prophecy of, say, a little event, making the most of it, say a little funding round or an exit or something, gets the media excited, then the investors want to look at what's happening as well. Then more money comes in, and you start to gradually build this snowball, and you almost create this self-fulfilling prophecy. So how much, I guess the question is, how tangible is it to say, you can build an ecosystem and these are the blocks that you should build it with? Or is it this intangible kind of concept?
Yeah, I think that's like just one part of it. So, I mean, have you been to Berlin?
No.
Yeah, so like not much going on, even though it seems like there's like everything. So I think that's a lot of this, that it's not enough to have kind of like just the hype. You actually have to have kind of like reality. And I think that then of course when you have kind of like real activity and real action going on, then you can kind of like amplify that. But I don't think that you can just like create it kind of like out of thin air. And I think again, of course, always self-fulfilling prophecies. I mean, that is something that it's one way of looking at it, but it's also that kind of like, hey, it's just like we, or what's cool about reality is that we can kind of like make it. So I think that you have to have kind of like that attitude. But I really think that what is very important is that I'm a big believer in having this kind of like grassroots approach, and if you are only trying to you have like some government policy and like, okay, please, all the young people in the country do startups and like yada yada yada, then it's like nothing much typically comes out of that. And Jyrki Katainen, who used to be the Prime Minister of Finland, he was at one of these like World Economic Forum like things, and then chairing this entrepreneurship like roundtable. And then he was asked that, like, so how did you guys in Finland make this fantastic explosion in startups happen? And then he answered that, I don't know. And of course he knew, and he's been to Slush many times and like all of that, but he wanted to make the point that it wasn't him, it wasn't the government, it was kind of like the young people, the students, the grassroots like activity that made it happen. And I think that, okay, there are very few prime ministers that would admit that they don't know something, but I think that captures it kind of that it's not the government making it happen. It really is like all of us.
Do you know, I definitely don't think it's a self-fulfilling prophecy at all. I think it's like building anything. It starts with, is there a common interest and purpose here, right? It's a bit like, you form a club of any sort, yeah? So, and a good analogy actually for all of this stuff is, it's a look at Facebook as an organization, yeah? Is there a common interest in bringing people together on a platform like this? Yes, there is, yeah? That's very important, so that's good. Now, how does it grow and survive? It only grows if it continues to be relevant and continues to offer people what they want, yeah? And then, of course, it needs funding and so on. So if you look at Facebook, why has Facebook been successful? Well, it's been successful because it's been able to combine a number of factors, growing the network, keeping content that is interested, getting users and developers to put content, developing a business model. It's the fine balance and combination of those factors that kind of keeps them, and so again, if you look at Facebook's challenge now, what's happening is it of interest to the teenagers? Less than it was, so they start to go to other platforms. And that's the same with our networks, right? So in Tech Nordic Advocates, is there a common shared purpose and interest in building an ecosystem across the Nordics and Baltics? Yes, there absolutely is. So what does it take to grow that? It's about bringing people together and doing the right things that engages people, and of course the whole funding and business model behind it. It's an art, it's not a science. It's actually really hard. But I think it's, I don't think it's a self-fulfilling prophecy for sure.
Are you going to make it free to disagree with me?
I'm not sure. It's like, you can't really say yes or no, but actually I agree with both of the Peter and Jeanette. And somehow I feel, listening to you and also what I'm thinking, is it kind of boils down to the people in the community. Because you also, if you were at the opening when Maria, CEO of TechChill, she also mentioned that in Latvia, like 7-8 years ago, there was nothing much happening, but it actually started as a group of people passionate about what they're doing, about their startup, and they started just meeting up And it was started in a bar, open coffee meetings, couple of people. Then they built, and then they started basically attracting more people that are interested in the same things. And then it's kind of starting, the building blocks are coming in. Of course, the investment, the government, the universities, it's all around it, and it somehow has to work. But for that to work, everyone somehow needs to be interested in that. And
yeah, but I think also that, like it's like a terminology thing here, because I mean like with the self-fulfilling prophecy and all of that, that's absolutely what it's about. And again, I mean, having just like activity, you know, grassroots or not, doesn't really lead anywhere. And I think that it's kind of like the vision and leadership thing. And if you look at all the successful communities, I mean, kind of like my experience, I built, started like Mobile Monday, that was like in 2000, we made that the biggest mobile community around the planet. And again, there was a very simple kind of like purpose and kind of like the interest was to kind of like, again, raise awareness around mobility. Of course, now that doesn't really matter too much because I mean everybody has one of these and you know like no big deal. But when we started, this was when in the US I was told that in the US we don't need mobile phones because everybody has, or there's like plenty of pay phones available all over the place. And it's like right, and now it sounds like totally stupid, but that was kind of like the argument way back. And I think that what is interesting then, and then you look at like take Slush for example. That it's actually grassroots, but it's super powerful brand. And brand is not just like some visual identity, but it's like the story and like why and everything. So okay, where do we want to go? Like there, and then you just like go there. And I think maybe one final example. So way back like in the 90s, so long time ago. I was at HP and we actually started this HP Bazaar. And then people were like, so what is it? Is it like a developer program, marketing program, some kind of partner program? And I said, yes, it's all of that and more. And that was actually what it was. So it was a combination of like co-working and like corporate like incubator, accelerator, hackathons that we call Bazaar camps and all of that. But the interesting thing is that then many other people did competence centers and excellence centers and like super boring stuff. And all of those like came and like went, and we kind of like kept going. And I think that what I've learned like from all of these activities that it's all about kind of like a branded community. And the brand here is like the purpose and like why you're doing this. But it's super important, and already when I hear that, okay, that you're chairwoman of the Latvian Startup Association or whatever it was called, that already sounds like super boring and super corporate, and I wouldn't like to have anything to do with something like that. But I mean, like it's just, so I think that brand and all of this is, there's no reason to be boring. So that's, and again, like if you look at now with, TechChill and all of this here, I mean, it's again, it's fantastic to have all the people here, and it's like a relaxed atmosphere and all of this. So I think that it's perfectly okay to brand things properly. But yeah, anyway.
I think you mentioned snowballing before, right? It's like building anything, right? It's like how do you build something based on common purpose and interest, and then you've got to grow it to a level then, and that's a hard bit, isn't it? I think if you're doing it well, there does come a point where, so then you start to get some key players in our case, so if I look at our journey over the last couple of years, so now we got Airbnb involved, Salesforce, we got like big name organizations that are starting to say, hey, this organization is relevant to us, it's doing some good stuff. And that is actually attracting other people. So that's where the snowballing effect starts. It's like any company, isn't it? Once you get one good client, it starts to say, hey, if it's good enough for them, it's good enough for us. But I think maybe, but not an automatic snowballing for sure. Yeah.
So I live in Copenhagen, and one of the things that frustrates me most with the startup ecosystem there is that everyone is really fucking bad at working with each other. People are pissed off that why are you doing that initiative, right? Even if it benefits the whole ecosystem, it benefits Copenhagen. No, we want to do that one. Or like, I'm annoyed at you because you did that and we should have done that, right? So how do you reconcile like individual needs and requirements in terms of, building your own personal brand or, building a profitable business yourself, say you're a co-working space, for example, and still push an ecosystem forward together? Like, how do you reconcile those differences?
I'm thinking about it, and actually, it's true. I also see it here. And of course, every brand is like they want to see themselves as the best ones, that they are doing the good thing. But I think it's more about the long-term thinking, and I think it also kind of gets back to the people, to the person who creates the brand. And I agree, the brand and the purpose is important, and I think it's the people need to start thinking in the long term. For example, of course, if you there's a win situation for you now, but that means someone has to lose. In long term, there's no like winners. You have to find a way that kind of you push yourself to something. You have your purpose, but you're not also like bothering someone else or like climbing on them just because you want to like destroy and be the only one. It doesn't matter. Like there are like even like for example association or accelerator. There are so many startups, even like startup competition as well. It doesn't matter. You don't have to be the only best one.
How do you change that mindset then? Because I still think it is very much a me. How do you change that mindset then? I think it very much is a me first attitude still in a lot of ecosystems. I don't know whether it is the case so much in Finland, but certainly in the ones I spend a lot of time in, there is still this me first approach. So how do we change the thinking now?
Yeah, but I think that it's also like it's a leadership thing, but it's also kind of like you have to lead by example. And one thing, and it's actually very interesting to listen to the discussion, because I think that kind of like also thinking about like when we started Slush and all of that and it was actually great. It was like already like 2 years ago, and we, at Slush, we have new people coming in, and it's also kind of like a massive like educational program that we cycle through, kind of like the leadership and everything. So nobody's there for like many years. So it's and then that of course means that you lose a bit of the history and like looking back. And I was actually very happy when some of the like the new leadership and like some of the young people there in the Slush organization were super concerned because there are too many investors coming to the event. And then I told them that, okay, guys, first Slush in 2008, why we kind of like started was that there was like no reason for investors to come. That there's like, okay, why bother? And it's like far away, and like, what do you guys like even do? And then, what was very important, I think it's important to share these stories because it's easy to understand now that actually what we did with Slush, that everybody, all the startups, all the entrepreneurs realize that actually if we create massive value in Slush, it's actually much bigger value for every individual startup, because guess what? Now you just show up at Slush and there's like plane loads of people flying in from Silicon Valley and half of China, everybody is there. Where can we put our money? And are you guys the next Supercell or Rovio or whatever? So I think that you need to kind of like share these kind of stories, and I think then people understand that yes, you can do your little startup bootcamp thing in Copenhagen, but actually maybe you want to do something together with the rest of the people and make it bigger, and actually you all get more value. But I think that you have to go through the experience and the learning experience to see that actually, yeah, sure, we should do that because actually I'm going to get even more success. And it's not always like easy to kind of like grasp.
Do you know, I'd love to answer that question as well, actually. I think it's such an important issue you flagged, Neil, and absolutely we experience this all the time. What you really want, of course, is healthy co-opetition, really, right? So there's always going to be competition, between startup hubs and accelerator programs and all of that stuff. And then there are some people, and that's not only in tech, and it's not only in Copenhagen, although it definitely is in Copenhagen, that have the wrong mindset, okay? So how do you change it? You go without them. Because you know what? You just go and work with some people that have the same mindset as you, that want to go and make things happen and try and make 2 and 2 equal 5. And when you go and do that and you demonstrate that there is much more value in doing that than the guys who didn't want to work with you in the first place, who was me first, will come back and say, actually, maybe this is interesting after all. It's the only way, you know? Because unfortunately, there is that mindset stuff, and the people who are going to make things happen in this world are the people with your mindset and our mindset, which is collaboration is actually better in the long run. So I think that's how you do it. You go without them and then wait for them to come back, basically.
Yeah, I would just like to emphasize also the messages is like you have to show example. There has to be example, and you need to talk about it. I also agree that you need to do like events and do them together and create this value. And share everything with others, like with the community. Because I think for most of the people, it's you need to see someone on the stage sharing something. You want to relate to that person. If you kind of relate to them and you see that they can do something, they can change something, they think this way, they want to bring value, it's just natural that you kind of feel inspired, and you have to share it.
I think, and it's also the same kind of perspective I've had, because I think after Arctic Startup, 5 years ago, I was one of the first to write about Nordics collectively. And then, these days, there's a lot of sites doing that, a lot of similar stuff to what I'm doing. And do you know what? I think that's great, because it means I have a bigger audience to potentially talk to, right? More people are going to be interested in reading about this. And ultimately, that's going to serve kind of the ecosystem as well. So like for me, it's like the more people doing what I'm doing, the better it actually is for me and for the bigger picture. And I think that's pretty much what you guys were touching on there. In terms of more tangible kind of ingredients of an ecosystem, my personal opinion is that the ability to attract talent and retain talent within it is the most important thing. So I guess that there is kind of 2 angles to that. So there's the attraction of international talent coming in, but also keeping it internally in the first place. So just wondered what your thoughts were in terms of what you've seen in the Nordics and also in your respective countries in terms of the talent question, and what can we do more to attract talent to our individual ecosystems?
I can start, I guess, and especially as Latvia is super small country. Estonia, I guess, is smaller, but then again, it's the same. And even like as I always talk to people, like we like to compare ourselves, Latvia, Estonia, Lithuania, between ourselves. But then again, even all 3 of us are not bigger than most of the countries. Like we are still small as 3 countries. And talent for us, I think it's important, because if you want to create an ecosystem, you have to have these people, you have to have events. And if you have limited amount of people, you need more. You need to attract them from outside. And I think one thing is most of them are like startup people, either the startup founders that they want to go and do their own business somewhere in the country. So of course, as Latvia, we would like to have to do them here. And also for those startups, when they grow, they need more talent, they need employees. And what we can do, I think the most important thing is to help with the, I guess, first regulations, because that's what we are also doing now, and that's our kind of story. We are creating, we have a startup law that we are trying to help with tax to the startups. We also have a startup visa, kind of to have people who are outside EU to come and actually be here and do their business. And I think that's the one thing that needs to be fixed first, at least in my opinion, because if you want people to invite to your country, you need to have that easy for them. Because if they come and they can actually make a company here, and it's, I don't know, in local language or is super complicated, they anyway will go away. So you need to create this, at least the first step is regulatory environment easy, and take away as much bureaucracy as possible. And then you can start building on top of that with events, with ecosystem, and
We have a couple of minutes left. If anyone has a question at any point, think about it. But
yeah. So I think that of course, I mean, the regulation we need to kind of like deal with, and I'm not like a huge fan of having kind kind of like new regulation for startups. So what I'm pushing for, like for example in Finland, is just to make it like super easy for anybody to come and set up their company. And I don't like startup or not, so I just like get rid of the bureaucracy and there's kind of like huge shortage of kind of like talent everywhere. So and it's global competition, so we just need to make it super easy. And I think that's kind of like the starting point. But then what we are doing is that we're also thinking again like the community together super long term. So one thing that we're doing now actually in Finland and Estonia, first of all, we're like working super closely together. So for us, I mean, Tallinn is not competition, it's actually like helping, and the other way around. So I think that is super important, that if Tallinn wins, Helsinki wins, and the other way around, so no problem. And so I think, and the same thing here, that I mean, if we have more startups here, it's great for us. And so I don't see any problem there. But then we're also now working on, we're going to bring in 150,000 foreign university students to Finland by 2020 and 30,000 to Estonia. So that's again going to be pretty good. And then I want to actually, after they studied like 4 or 5 years, what do I want to do? I want to give them a passport. So then they are like citizens, so like easy to come and go. Not all of them need to stay, but they can like come and go as they please. So we are pushing for that kind of stuff, and that's why again, if you look at kind of like our part of the world, it's going to be the fastest growing quite easily. And this comes back to this, like what I said about like Slush in the previous panel, that when we started Slush, November, Helsinki, cold, dark, slush on the ground, not the Silicon Valley, better. So give us 5 years and it's going to be obvious why we're much better than Silicon Valley. Not just different, but like much better.
Do you know, I think it's a really important perspective. So we are all now in kind of Nordics, Baltics, we get this stuff. There's a really important point here, which is we need to learn to shout much more to the rest of the world about the opportunity in the region. And because we know for a fact, there's loads of the research organizations that continue to prove that 90% of the investment into the region is actually from the region itself. So we need to start shouting to the rest of the world about our success stories in the Nordics. There's loads of opportunity here. I think that's part of what we do in Tech Nordic Advocates with our global friends across the other global networks, is to say, hey, there's a lot going on. There's a lot of investment opportunity. There's opportunity for talent. And I think then you come to so how do you actually, provide the right environment? And some of that is hygiene, it's about taxation, it's about regulation and HR and all of that stuff. But I think there's a massive big education promotion exercise to be done to the rest of the world about how much is actually really going on here. That makes it exciting, Okay.
Does anyone have a question at all for the panel? No? Then I think we're just about ready to wrap up. I think just to sum up some of the main reflections from the panel, I think I need to bin my self-fulfilling prophecy thesis. I think working together and seeing a bigger opportunity beyond your own individual ecosystem and working, say, as Nordics or as Baltics or as Europe or whatever, but kind of working together is key to this, and bridging the gaps. Both physically, but also in terms of the community, is key. And just that whole talent aspect as well, and being attractive to talent. And I think proximity is also important. I think, I recently tweeted that the best thing about Copenhagen's tech scene is it's 20 minutes away from Malmo. And the best thing about Malmo's tech scene is it's 20 minutes away from Copenhagen.
Yeah, and I mean that's also we believe in like proximity. So of course, if you look at like Helsinki and Tallinn and where we're at, I mean we're 6 hours from Beijing, 6 hours from like Delhi. I go to China like twice a month, so I always say that Wuotsai, Beijing, Beijing, Dashu, Sile, Baga, Chinchi, Hanyu, Danshu, Wada, Hanyu, Haibu, Mei. So I've been like to Beijing, Beijing, for like 8 weeks, and that's why my Chinese is not yet perfect. But again, I mean, China is just like one country away, and we received the most Chinese investment of pretty much like any country, 10 billion in Supercell, and then like that's just like the tip of the iceberg. So what we have that is unique here is that we are like at the heart of all of Eurasia, 70% of the world's population right around us. So again, Silicon Valley is like far away. Around us we have 5 billion people, so it's like a pretty good start. And I think that is the kind of perspective that we also need to kind of like start thinking about. And we're hosting like Chinese investors like on a daily basis, and yeah, they're loaded. So it's pretty good.
Excellent. I'm scared we're about to get kicked off the stage, so we're going to have to wrap up. But thank you to our panel.
Can I just say we are on stand 13 if anyone wants to come and talk to us. Come and say hello.
All right, thank you very much.
Share.